Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, let's start off with this map from weather.gov, kind of showing us the major regions on Monday and early Tuesday that we've got to be on the lookout for. So as we discussed in our last video update, we knew that Montana was going to be seeing quite a bit of snowfall, some pretty strong winds, and certainly we've got some winter storm warnings out for Monday across a big section of that state. Across the northern tier states, it's been very cold. We have a nice trough moving in that's really established some colder air across this area. And of course, if you're watching the Super Bowl late last night, you know how cold it was outside the stadium. Well, we got wind chill advisories still up for this area. Kind of when you get into the main part of the Corn Belt, we are watching this area right here across Iowa, Illinois, southern Wisconsin for a system that's coming through on Monday. We'll take a close look at that in just a few moments. And then the northeast, we got a couple of big shots at some major snows, getting away from the coast, but kind of in the interior here coming up. So let's kind of digest all of it together and kind of figure out what this week holds for us and get a little bit longer term outlook at the end of the video. So here it is. This is an animation taking you through the next 3.5 days. So this gets us all the way up to Thursday. And this is what the radar would look like, at least as forecast by the 0Z NAM. So let's kind of take a look at each piece and discuss what's going on here. So late in the night on Sunday, we can clearly see here we had our system already going over Montana. And we had this larger system that was exiting the northeast. So let's get past that, since that was what was going on that night, and get into Monday. Now on Monday, higher air pressure is going to dominate in the center part of the country, so right in through here. But watch what's going to skirt right along the northern edge of this, and we'll take a look at why in just a few moments. But in a nutshell, we've got an upper level disturbance that's going to be helping to lift some air, such that by mid-morning we could see snow starting to spread across parts of Nebraska, getting over here into South Dakota, and then spreading across Iowa. And that's going to move really quickly out ahead of that upper level trough feature. You can see it moves across Iowa into southern Wisconsin, Illinois by the time we get into the evening hours on Monday, and then as it goes across Indiana, Michigan, Ohio into the overnight hours. So it's going to move relatively quickly, but as it comes through, could get a pretty good hit of snow right into this area, kind of northern Illinois, most of Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Indiana, northern Ohio. So we're going to be talking about a pretty big area in here of at least 2 inches, probably a tighter swath right into the center here of at least 3, maybe local areas getting over 6 inches out of this one. But what we're going to see is that's kind of our first hit out of this, because what's going to happen is that a larger wave is going to come in behind this. This is really going to get things going on Tuesday. And that system you can see really getting cranking up here Tuesday evening. And this is when the deeper trough kind of comes through. And this was what we talked about, in our last video. We had some concern that this wave was going to be digging a little bit harder. It's going to allow for some better support in the upper levels to bring a much bigger snowfall total right here across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. But as it stands, the system is kind of, for lack of a better term, flattened out a little bit. And as a result, it's really going to get its act together once it gets toward the northeast. So look at this broad area of precipitation stretching from Texas going all the way up into parts of Pennsylvania, New York. And with this, this again is valid 10 a.m. on Wednesday. We're going to see quite a bit of precip along the leading edge here of this system. So that's going to move on off to the north and east pretty quickly. And we got another system following this, so we got to keep a very close eye on. So let's take a look at how it all is kind of unfolding in the atmosphere. So let's go right on in here to just real quick talk about what's going to happen by the time we get into Monday midday. So here's the very subtle feature that we're watching in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This little region through here, this kind of vortex is going to be pushing on through, and out ahead of it, we're going to be bringing in enough lift in the atmosphere to bring that snow. So there it is. This is Monday midday. You can see it spreads on to the east by the time we get into Monday evening, and on off to kind of Indiana, Ohio by early Tuesday morning. So that's the first system. The second one starts kind of showing up in the flow of the atmosphere here once we get into Tuesday around noon. So there it is. There's our larger trough feature. Plenty of cold air on the north side of this thing. And as it kind of comes through, what we'll see here, let's get right on in. There we go. This is now 6 a.m. on Wednesday. So you can see the elongated trough here is much, much flatter than when we initially saw it. We got the advancement here of the jet streak kind of pulling farther to the north and east rather than staying near the rounded edge of this trough. And so what all that means is this really just removes some of the stronger curvature effects we want out of a trough like this to develop a much deeper low. And as a result of that, it's just going to have this elongated area of warm air advection. That's where we're blowing a lot of warm air over the top of some cooler air that just stretches here, kind of moving into the Appalachian Mountains, going up toward the northeast. So we just missed it. We were hoping that it was going to be a little bit a deeper digging trough, and it turns out it's really going to get its act together once it gets to the northeast. So that they're going to get some big snows there. And again, there's all that heavy precip. Now watch what the model's trying to do here. So this is Sunday afternoon. GFS run. We're going to see a very similar setup toward the end of the week, where we're going to get a very, very weak little feature that's going to try to come through. You can see it's going to maybe bring some snows here into northern Illinois, Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Indiana by the time we get into Friday. Again, a warm air advection event happening here, but we're going to start to see the atmosphere kind of trying to reload another trough, see it coming in here through parts of Idaho and Montana. And if that happens, and it digs, deeply like this, there it is. Nice little low is going to develop. And out ahead of it, we're going to bring in quite a bit of moisture, and it's going to go racing through, the Ohio River Valley. So we're keeping the Ohio River Valley wet. All points to the south and east of that wet as well. But as we've just been learning with each one of these systems, the models are kind of, I think, pushing more toward high amplitude, which means the troughs and ridges are much larger than they actually are. So we have to keep an eye on this one as well. This will be toward the end of your week and the weekend, watching another big one coming through here. So I guess the good news is we at least see systems coming through. We don't want to see this area continuing to dry out. We do know how very dry it is here. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute. So at least we have a couple of shots here throughout the week. Now I'll show you this again just to kind of put it all together here. But this is the GFS, I think being the GFS, 10 days worth of snowfall. You can clearly see the overall flow pattern. Montana getting hammered quite a bit, a snow swath kind of stretching through parts of South Dakota into Nebraska, into Iowa, Illinois, this northern tier kind of getting the most of the snow. But I don't want you to pay any attention to the amounts, just because it's more important is to see where the heavy snow bands are going to go before these systems get to the northeast. So again, if we just get into, Tuesday morning, you can really see that swath in through there by early Tuesday morning, where we're talking about some locations getting up here into these colors, which represent 4 to maybe 6 inches of snow in this area. And then we see the second system trying to come through, but it really doesn't do much until, in terms of snow for the Corn Belt, until it gets here into the eastern Corn Belt in Ohio by the time we get into Wednesday. So, and then watch, if I just kind of let it continue to go, you see it's that Friday system that comes through. Again, that's that leading wave, adding some more snow to this area, northern Illinois, and then the bigger event out of this one, as the trough digs in, brings in heavier snows there. So, but again, we don't have any confidence in this just yet. I'm just looking at this, trying to pinpoint down where at least the current model runs are putting in the heavier snow bands. And so, just look at this again for location. Let's not look at this necessarily for snowfall amounts. Okay, let's assess the pattern, because there's some interesting things happening here. Now, globally, we've got several big things that are kind of working to shape this pattern. We have an interesting event happening with the interaction between the stratosphere and the troposphere here over the North Pole, where basically the polar vortex is elongated and might even split off. And as we watch the polar vortex do that, it's going to be, where's that cold air really going to go, and then how long is it going to stay in that configuration? What's it going to do after that? We have a little bit of kind of funny business going on down here, where we typically talk about El Nino, La Nina. Basically, we've had a shift in the overall pressure patterns across the open Pacific here, plus some changes in the normal trade winds down here that are kind of leading to a very complicated pattern. And if you'd have asked me a few days ago, I would have told you that it looked like most of February was going to carry with it a cold bias, and that still might be the case. But what I want you to pay attention to here is what we're seeing by the time we get into maybe mid-month. So to start right now, this is the 5th here. We see the really well-established deep trough of the Hudson. We got this broader ridge that's out west, and this is going to keep the west warm and the east, relatively cold. Again, we're watching these little features kind of wiggle their way around. So here's the 6th. That would be Tuesday. Watching this little trough digging right in through here. That's going to be the system that kind of eventually gets going in the Ohio River Valley and takes north, which we just talked about. Okay, but let's just get to what I was kind of getting the point of here. What I'm starting to notice, and this will be interesting to see if this actually breaks down, is that the overall flow pattern out here in the Pacific actually becomes quite amplified, and it looks as though those changes I just mentioned might kick this deeper trough over to Greenland rather than letting it sit over the Hudson. And if that's the case, we got to be watching for things to come in on the west coast, which could change our whole pattern here for the eastern 2/3 of the country. So here we go. This is the system I was telling you about that was going to come in next week. And see that trough there as that swings across? That could be the next big one for the Corn Belt, but again, a lot of uncertainty. And look at this. We're watching this little feature right here. If it actually materializes and comes there into California, that means several things. This is precip for California, which they desperately need, but also this could mean for the building of a ridge across the middle part of the country by the time we get to mid-month. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty with all of this, so I guess what we're doing here is we're just kind of getting an overall feel of the pattern, trying to understand if we're going to stay stuck in this configuration of deep trough over the east and big ridge over the west, or we're going to see that break down. There is some model agreement with this overall pattern. I'll just kind of show you this. This is from the latest run from the ECMWF, that's the European model, their ensemble forecast here. It's showing that maybe mid-month we could break into a broader warm pattern as we watch that big trough transition east temporarily. I don't think it's going to get stuck like this. I certainly see cold chances again for the end of the month as kind of the Canadian prairies reload there and the jet stream goes back into more what I would call more of a zonal flow at one point, bringing in the chances for colder air, just given the overall trough ridge pattern we've seen. So persistence is helping me out there. But I just want to let you know, while we're going to be cold for several days now in the short-term forecast, there may be some relief mid-month. Okay, let's step back, look bigger picture, then we'll get down to South America. What we're looking at here is the last 30 days. On top, looking at temperature anomalies, and on the bottom, looking at precipitation anomalies. Now, why I want to look at this is because there's a few big areas I really want to be paying attention to. So first, it's kind of interesting. When you look over the last 30 days, because we had those warmer time periods in the 3rd and 4th weeks of January, gosh, the United States really doesn't look like it's been that cold. Now, you go to the last week of December through the first 3 weeks of January, it was really cold in the eastern half of the country. One common theme, though, is it's been very, very warm out west and very, very dry in California. Now, let's get across the pond here and talk about Europe. Yeah, I know you've probably heard some major stories of some huge snows in the Alps, but surrounding this, most of Europe has had a very warm winter. Unlike the U.S., every day that I look at this map, I've seen warm bias across Europe. So this means the region around the Black Sea where we grow a lot of wheat and corn later on in the year, but we have a lot of winter wheat crop in through here, has had so far a very warm winter, and in that same area, it's been pretty wet. I mean, this is actually I could call this the driest I've seen this map looking back over the last 2 months, but it's still wet there. So I think there might be a story to be told here about what might happen to that wheat crop as we get into spring. I think it might be very susceptible to a late season frost, which we're going to have to keep a very close eye on. Now, let's get down here to South America. We know overall we've seen a little bit of a drying here in Brazil, although the forecast has been for quite wet, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. But we still see the big pockets of drier conditions down in South America. I'm sorry, down in, of course, South America, but down here in Argentina. And that's a story that I kind of want to tell as we finish this up. So I just wanted to pull off kind of some satellite information to kind of give us a clue here. Now take a look at what we're looking at here. This is January 28th, 2018 on the left. This was January 28th, 2017. Look at the difference in Argentina. Now this is a vegetative health index. It's got issues. This isn't the best metric to look at, but we can use it just as a kind of gauge what's going on here. And I'll just say this, last year at this time, well, you want to get closer to the blues as you can. A lot of Argentina looked much better than it does right now. Come over here and look right now. We certainly see our vegetative health index on much further onto this side of the spectrum. So it appears, at least from satellite, that things don't look as green and don't look as healthy in the near infrared, which is very important to kind of assess what's going on there. So let me show you what happened over the last week. As I animate this, let's just keep our eye down here in Argentina. We know Brazil's going to get wet, but watch this. We really don't see any major cold frontal passages that brought in quite a bit of precip. So this is a week that they have spent very dry in this area. And that was actually very well forecast by the models, as was this heavy precip in through here. And you can see that the short range model runs getting us out the next 10 days continue to pick up on that heavy rain in through this area. So this will slow planting down. So that'll be one issue. But you can also see down here in Argentina, the models are still picking up over the next 10 days, a continuation of that drier bias. So I'll tell you this, the models have been kind of over-promising precipitation in Argentina, and I think we've got some drier stresses down there more than maybe what we're leading on to with some of these model forecasts. So that'll continue to be our story. We'll have to keep monitoring it closely. While we do know the Brazilian bean crop is big, we do know there's a bit of a delay in the planting of their corn and cotton. Argentina is probably going to be our bigger story moving forward. So to wrap this up, keep an eye on that. That could be the thing that could move our bean and corn markets in the near term. But for those of you that are kind of from Montana stretching all the way over to the eastern Corn Belt, be on the lookout for chances of quite a bit of snow and some really cold weather coming at least for the next week. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out on Thursday. To get morning farm report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows you a snapshot of your field conditions each morning, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for a free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for growers who work with AD merchandisers. Look forward to talking again on Thursday.